What's up, everybody? This is Miles Turner, the Indiana Pacers. You're listening to the Paceroos Podcast. Be sure to follow @Paceroos on Twitter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Paceroos Podcast, the only Australian NBA podcast with a bias towards the Indiana Pacers. It's been a while since I said it. Not sure whether I would remember it all. I did. That's a win. I'm coming to you live from my new office, which is also my bedroom. My name is Adam. I'm your usual host of this podcast, and I'm joined once again by Alex. How's your isolation going?
Yeah, it's good to be back, man. It feels like it's been about a year since we've done one of these, so it might be a bit rusty, boys, but definitely good to be back. And we've actually got some things to talk about today. So, you know, it's getting a bit boring here at home, but I'm glad we're back on the podcast train.
Yeah, no Paul Pierce talk on this podcast, Justin. We're just going to ignore that topic like it never happened.
Nah, he has some serious takes online. Some of them I don't mind if he's a bit out there, but him saying LeBron's not in the top five greatest players is a bit salty, I think. But great to be back. Missed you guys and missed talking basketball.
Definitely. We're going to kick it off with The Last Dance because it's now finished up. We've had 10 full episodes to digest and get through. And in honor of Michael Jordan, this is my flu game today. As you can hear, I'm a little bit nasally, so apologies in advance for my voice, but I'll gut through it and beat the Jazz.
You didn't order pizza last night, did you, Adam?
Yeah. I had 7 guys turn up at the front of my house to deliver a pizza to me because they knew that I was recording a podcast today. So The Last Dance has obviously been and gone. It was arguably one of the greatest sporting documentaries in the history of sporting documentaries. And I think for the three of us being massive basketball fans, it was a trip down memory lane. But I think I want to start with you, Alex, because as someone who is a bit younger than Justin and myself and didn't necessarily remember any of Jordan's prime or even his late prime, how was it from your perspective to sort of go through and get that education from his perspective on his career?
Yeah, it was amazing. Like you said, I mean, I wasn't even born when he was on the Bulls. So, you know, to go back and be able to see, and I just want to say, by the way, shout out to the camera crews from the 97-98 season, because as a video editor, I can appreciate the fact that the quality of those videos was better than what I get today in 2020. So insane. I don't know how they got that done, but yeah, like you said, you know, to get that not just, you know, we've all seen the highlights. You can go on YouTube, search up Michael Jordan, there'll be a million videos, but to actually get, you know, what happened and behind the scenes knowledge from not just him, but his teammates, you know, Phil Jackson and his family members, and to know everything what happened. Yeah, it was incredible to see, and just shows, man, how good he was and how much he really wanted to win. Like, he just did not care what anyone thought about him. He didn't care about what his teammates thought. He didn't want to be Mr. Nice Guy. And I think, you know, more people today should probably take that attitude when it comes to winning.
Before the documentary, I want to ask, were you of the opinion that Jordan was the greatest of all time?
Yeah, I mean, like, I don't really care about GOAT talks. I think they're outplayed, but like, I mean, yeah, it's him, LeBron, and probably Kareem for me, like the best three of all time.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people care about that debate. There's a lot of LeBron fans, a lot of Jordan fans, a lot of Kobe fans for, you know, with good reason. I think probably the disappointing part of the documentary, Justin, it's something we talked about after Kobe's untimely passing, is that we kind of need to get past all this conversation and we need to just focus on how good these players were and are and just kind of enjoy it. Have you found that there's been just obviously through probably boredom more than anything else, a bit more GOAT talk than there probably should be, and people should just kind of be a little bit more appreciative of the greats?
I couldn't agree more. I think after the first 2 or maybe 4 episodes, I go on Twitter and LeBron James is trending.
Yeah.
Why is he trending online? This documentary has zilch nothing to do with him. LeBron hasn't probably played a game against MJ. If he did, it was maybe a game or two with the Wizards when MJ played for them. And, you know, Jordan did an interview after his career finished and he got asked who's the GOAT. And Jordan said it's actually disrespectful for him to say he's the GOAT because he hasn't played against Bill Russell and Kareem and all those players that are past him. And, you know, LeBron has come out and said he thinks he is the GOAT. Kobe was probably a bit more down MJ's line where he wouldn't come out and say he's the GOAT. And it's fine. Like, you know, if you say MJ, Kobe, LeBron, all three of them deep down probably think they're the greatest of all time. And that's fine. You know, you've got to have that personal drive and think you're the greatest to succeed. And all three of them probably have that. But the whole debate, I get sick of reading it online. I don't really entertain it. But yeah, with the Last Dance documentary, I enjoyed it thoroughly. that episode 9 with a lot of Pacers footage. Really, I think I've watched that about 4 times. Had a good 15-minute block with Reggie Miller, and I just love that. They really did a good, vision of Reggie and his game winner, and what he was like with MJ. So I love that. But Adam, I want to get your point of view, because for me, it might be a weird takeaway from the doc, but I cannot believe Scottie Pippen did not enter the game when Phil Jackson didn't draw the play up for him. To me, I was like, my mouth was open for a minute. I was like, what the hell? Did you know that story, Adam?
Yeah, I did. I think I'm 33, so I was 12 years old when Mike retired, and I remember even growing up in Tasmania, we used to get the NBA Finals games on tape delay late at night, and I used to record them on VCR and watch them like after school and stuff. And so I knew a lot about the Bulls before I knew about the Pacers, to be honest, because obviously Jordan was Space Jam. Jordan was everything, and that's when I got introduced to Reggie, and I sort of chose my side from there. But it's interesting to reflect on that Pippen moment, because unfortunately it kind of tars the rest of his career, and if he'd been a first option his whole career, there's no telling how high he would be on the pantheon, I guess, of greats. I think he'd be pretty high. I'm a big Pippen fan. I own a Pippen jersey. I think he was the prototypical point forward, and I think that it was a really telling moment for a guy that had been waiting to be the star for quite some time, had grown into a star, had come to terms with the fact that he was now the all-star and he was the player in that team. And I think it was an immature moment from what should have been a mature player at that point in time, and he would probably say the same thing. And I think he kind of did. He did say he doesn't regret it, because I feel like a lot of these guys have so much ego that they don't have regrets. But yeah, it's unfortunate, but it doesn't actually tarnish my view of Pip, because I've always been a big fan of his and his work. But Justin, it sounds like you took a lot more negatives from that particular anecdote. Alex, did you view that as a really big blight on Pippen's career?
Yeah, I mean, like, obviously it doesn't dictate his entire career, but I think that was probably the biggest issue with that Bulls dynasty in general. MJ said it himself, his biggest regret is that they didn't come back. He thinks they could have won 7. I mean, if he didn't retire, God knows they could have won 8 or 9, but I just think that at the end of the day, egos and, a lot of them were probably too arrogant. Krause, Pippen, even MJ. Like, I just think at the end of the day, they probably let their egos get the better of them, and, that it's a team sport. So, when you have moments like that, I think it probably speaks volumes to yourself as a character. And, what did they talk about? He was crying after the game. Like, his teammates couldn't even look at him. So, a moment like that.
Could you imagine in this day and age if a Westbrook did that?
Man, he would be blackballed for the rest of his career.
Oh, social media, Westbrook or Embiid or a player like that, if they sat
Durant.
Durant, like, I could not even believe the backlash they would get. And,
imagine being a teammate. Imagine being his teammate, and you rely on him. He's the guy on your team. You think he's going to take the big shot, and then he quits on you.
Yeah.
I would be, if I was a teammate, I would be pissed.
It's crazy. And, Adam, also, like, there's reports, don't know if they're true, but, apparently Pippen's absolutely ropeable about how the documentary was portrayed. What's your opinion on that?
I thought it was pretty fair to everyone, save for Jerry Krause and Horace Grant. I think Horace Grant had a point, like, to sort of throw him under the bus that he was the Sam Smith mole for the Jordan rules is unfair without some evidence that was the case. I think they might have to walk that back maybe, but Horace is clearly pretty upset that was inferred and even outright said by Jordan that that's his opinion. So I think that was pretty unfair without any sort of evidence to say that was the source. But the other guy is Jerry Krause. I think it's very easy to say that he made a really poor choice in not bringing back that team for the 98-99 lockout season. But what's harder is to give him the credit for the 6 championships they did win. There's no telling, like, if another GM in this day and age had have signed a Scottie Pippen level player for the salary that Scottie Pippen was making, then that GM would be lauded as a genius.
Yeah.
And there would be no way that that player would be looking at their contract and have to go out and basically say, give me more money. Like when Stephen Curry signed a 4-year, $44 million extension, everyone at the time thought it was probably a little bit of an overpay. And then all of a sudden he was an MVP, and all of a sudden the Dubs were lauded for, you know, an incredible contract. And, you know, Steph knew that he was going to get paid eventually. He knew that his career wasn't going to come to an end before the end of his deal. So I think it's probably pretty unfair to blame it all on Jerry Krause without giving him the credit for the championships or for playing his part in the championships or putting the team around Jordan and Pippen, and Jackson, who, you know, obviously was an incredible coach. So I feel like the documentary is a little unfair on those two guys. I feel like it was pretty fair on Pippen. I mean, you know, it did talk about how good he was. It talked about how he gutted it out in that last game in '98. You know, it did talk about his issues with his family and why he made the decision to sign that contract. And I think everyone can, you know, understand why you would sign a 6-year, $18 million contract when you're young and your father's in a wheelchair and, you know, you don't have any money coming in for your family. You want security. And you know what? He made a fair bit of money. He signed a $70 million deal coming out of that 98-99 season. He's okay. Let's not be concerned for Scottie Pippen's bank account. So yeah, I felt like it was a little unfair to Horace and Jerry Krause, but I felt like it was pretty fair on Pippen. Aside from Jordan, I'm interested in who do you think was the biggest winner out of the entire documentary? Justin, I'll start with you.
To be honest, I'd say Michael Jordan. You know, I know that's an easy answer, but I think there were reports of him wanting to release this once LeBron beat Cavaliers, and then that GOAT talk really sped up. Apparently, you know, Jordan had all this unseen footage, and he had to okay the documentary being made. And the week of the Cavs championship parade, he okayed it. So I think that's massive to me. I think the younger generation, Alex, you can probably talk to this more than me, but they probably never understood the greatness of Jordan. Even me, I was on the back end of his career, obviously seeing highlights like everyone, but just seeing his determination and will and his, you know, that 98 season where Pacers had that game 7, you could tell he was spent. How
he was playing 42 minutes a game as well.
42 minutes. He's got the flu game. He's got, you know, he said every time he'd check into the game against Pacers, he'd leave with a scratch or a bruise. And then you're playing against Utah with Karl Malone and John Stockton. How he won that championship is just amazing. And you can see his drive. It was just unbelievable to see the backstage footage, like you already mentioned, Alex. And I'll go to you next. But I also want both your opinion on if Pacers won that game 7, do you think we would have beaten Utah?
Yes.
Yeah. I think so too, but others have disagreed, thinking we couldn't have matched up with Karl Malone. But I mean, Jordan and a few other Bulls players said we were the hardest series they basically faced. I think Pacers would have beaten Utah, but yeah, interesting to get your 2 thoughts.
Yeah, Alex, who won the documentary firstly, and then secondly, would the Pacers have won the championship?
You know what? I'm going to go John Paxson and Steve Kerr.
Yep.
I think those were 2 of the biggest winners. You know, like probably 2 guys that would be forgotten about in NBA history if it wasn't for Kerr's coaching. But with this doc, you know, they get a new life. Half an episode was dedicated to Steve, and John Paxson talked about how, you know, he hit that big shot. I think to get those moments when, you know, it's a documentary about Michael Jordan, and here they are getting, you know, 10, 15 minutes screen time about how they hit one shot is pretty incredible. So I think those 2 are biggest winners. And if we're talking Jazz Pacers, I think it would have been close. I reckon it would have gone 6 or 7, but I would say the Pacers winner, obviously being biased.
Pacers would have had a home court as well.
Well, yeah, then I'll give Pacers in probably 7.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about that Pacers team, because there's been a lot of talk about, you know, would Michael Jordan have come back if there was a team for him to play for. I think the Ringer have done a bit of work on the fact that there was no team for him to go to, and I just can't shake the feeling that he wouldn't play for any coach except Phil Jackson, but would he have played for Larry Bird?
That's interesting.
I just want to throw that out there because there was so much respect between those 2 guys. And, clearly they played in the dream team together. They were highly respected between each other. They both had a mutual friend in Magic. They, basically passed the baton from one to the other. And it's clear that Jordan had everlasting respect for those older guys, even though he thought he was better than them and had every right to do so. I'm interested as to whether if the Pacers had have thrown some sort of package with Jalen Rose involved, would that have been enough? Maybe a first round pick and made salaries match. Would that have been enough for Jordan to demand that he go play for Larry to try and win a ring in Indy? But I guess it's just a Pacers slant on the story that I have been thinking about since I saw that episode 10 about how he sort of wanted to come out and retire. He didn't want to retire, but wasn't really given a choice. Would he have played with Reggie? Would it have been a good fit? There's so many questions there, and it would have been. It's cool to think about, even though it's a complete what if, and it was very, very unlikely. Justin, what do you think?
Yeah, you've made me quite upset. Even episode 9 made me upset thinking about how close Pacers were to win a ring. So the Larry Bird twist is actually a good one. I've never thought of that, but yeah, bring up, would he have wanted to play with Reggie? Probably not. Would they have been
they were too much of competitors to play together.
Yeah, definitely. So, it is an interesting take, but yeah, like you mentioned at the top, Adam, what a documentary. I thought it was a hyped documentary. Sometimes those things don't deliver. You watch them and go, it was okay, but that was just all the unseen footage, all the, like, I can't even believe the backstage footage they had where, in the locker room, like they had the locker room of the All-Star game where Jordan's talking about Kobe and the other players are laughing. And you just go, this is unreal.
And you saw Rick Smith and Reggie in the background as well.
Yeah, so cool.
It was very, very cool. And I think that, the underrated part for me that I'm going to sound super old here, but people that didn't grow up when Michael Jordan was playing probably just don't get the context that he was quite literally the most famous person in the world for a period of time. Between Space Jam and the championships and the shoes and the dunks and, that Olympics through baseball, through, to the end of it, Space Jam and the end of his career, there were pockets of time there where he was probably more famous than just about anyone in the entire world, which you can only say about a handful of people like Michael Jackson.
Him and another MJ, I was going to say.
Yeah, Michael Jackson had it. Muhammad Ali had it. Probably for a very fleeting moment, Mike Tyson had it. Just pockets of time where everything he did was news, regardless of how big or small it was. Every move he made, every quote that he gave, it was just massive. And I think it's underrated that as far away as here, when we didn't get the NBA beamed into Australia like we do now, everyone knew who Michael Jordan was. Like, my dad knows who Michael Jordan is, and like he's a random 66-year-old guy from Tasmania that has barely seen an NBA game in his life, but he damn well knows who Michael Jordan is. And my mum, like I remember Bill Simmons always used to say that when his mum would ask him about things, that's when he knew that they were mainstream. And I think the first 2 episodes came out, and lo and behold, I get a call from my mum. Have you seen the Michael Jordan documentary? I thought of you when it came out. I'm like, wow, it's, the fame of the guy even now is astounding. And Justin, I'm sure, you would have seen the same thing. Like every second kid at your school would have been a Jordan fan in like primary school, right?
Yeah, it was all the basketball cards with Jordan on it and the Bulls jerseys, and like you said, the media was insane. Like you see pre-game, post-game, just 100 microphones shoved in his face, like 2 centimeters away from his face. And the Australian listeners, we AFL media is just so different with what players can say and how robotic they are. To me personally, AFL is so boring in the media game because all of them don't say anything. But the Americans and the Michael Jordan, the media are hanging off every word he says. That they there's episode 5 and 6 when they're talking about will he play next year, and they ask him every single day just because he might change his answer or one wording of his answer. So I thought it was amazing and just polar opposites to what we're compared to or used to in Australia.
Yeah, and I hope that changes a little bit after, the more exposure that American sports get and the Last Dance got. I think, Australian sports people should take heed of the fact that this guy has a lasting legacy because he was accessible and because he was answering these sorts of questions. And, at the same time, on the flip side of it, he couldn't go anywhere. Like, he couldn't do anything without being hounded by the public and the media. So it's an interesting life and tough in some aspects, but I'd want to live a day in his shoes. Absolutely. Who wouldn't? Now we'll park The Last Dance because we've talked about that a lot, and I want to get to something that's a little bit more current. And the NBA is on the verge of coming back. I think the date is mid-July at this point. I think the venue is Orlando's Disneyworld. As I said to you guys on Twitter, take that Super Bowl. The entire NBA is going to Disney World. But it's a really interesting conversation happening right now of how many games should be played. Should all teams go? Should it just be the playoffs? Should it be 5 games in the playoffs? Should the playoffs be seeded East-West? Should they be seeded 1-16? Like, there are so many conversations happening right now about how this structure should be. And I want to start with the playoff format and with the overall format of the restarted season. And I'll start with you, Alex. Do you have a preference for how this restarts, or are you at this point just like, just give me something?
I'll take a Pacers-Pistons game in the middle of nowhere at this point, boys. I will take anything. But honestly, I think that you boys would have seen my man Grant tweeted out that he thinks at least that there's going to be 5 regular season games. I don't know I think they will just do that. I mean, if you put these guys who haven't played for 3 months right into the playoffs, I think it's probably not that fair. So I agree that they should have, I'm not going to say they should start the regular season from where it was, but I think 5 to 10 regular season games is fair enough. And then we were talking about before the show, but I think Adam Silver would be much obliged to go with the 1 through 16 seed instead of the 1 through 8. So I would like to see the cross-conference playoff matchups. I don't know about you guys, but I just think that would, make it way more exciting. It would engage the fans. You could get, maybe guys like Kyrie and KD potentially coming back and playing the Lakers. I mean, first round matchup, that would be absolutely insane. So, I mean, what do you guys reckon about a 1 through 16 playoff seeding?
Justin, you go.
Yeah, I think it's the best thing that the NBA could do. I mean, everyone's saying it might be an asterisk kind of year for who wins the championship. Well, this legitimizes it even more. Like, Adam Silver's wanted this for a few years, I think, but he can't do it because the travel. You can't be flying from, Boston to LA if they matched up in the first round or whatnot. So if everyone's at that one venue in Disney World, then there's no excuse. And I'd love it. Like, as of right now, the Pacers would play Denver. I think that's cool playing Denver in the playoffs. We've never done it before. You've also
be a great series.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, in a series, sorry. Yeah, be awesome. So, you've always got Heat versus OKC, Boston versus Philly. I know they're from the same conference, but that would be good as well. And like Lakers Nets. So I think it's fantastic. I've got a different view from your first one though, Alex, and that's I don't think there's any point doing any regular season games. They're looking at training camp for like a month before they start. What is the point of flying Phoenix, Wizards, Cavaliers up when they're going to play 5 games, then go home, risk getting coronavirus, spreading it to other players? There's no incentive for Golden State to come play. I just think you've got to basically everyone's locked into a playoff position anyway. It's like Portland's 3.5 games out of this 8th spot. I think Wizards are like 5.5 games. If you're going to do 5 games, the 8's already set. I just think get things rolling with a 7-game playoff series. What do you think, Adam?
The only thing I'll say about that is that it comes down to the TV contract, because I know that some teams have played 65 games, some teams have played 68 games. If you need to get to a certain number to unlock revenue, and that revenue is going to result in you being far less in the red than you otherwise were, you're going to have to do that math and figure out is it going to cost us more to not play those games?
But you think Golden State are going to be like, all right, we're going to fly to Orlando, self-quarantine, go in a bubble, for 5 games where essentially they want to lose to get a better draft pick?
It depends how much of the player's salary you're saying that they're going to lose next year if they don't do it.
Yeah, and
I think the Players Association would want to get the players their full contracts.
I mean, these are conversations they're all probably having on their on their Zoom meetings, which it's fascinating to get everyone's opinions because I'm of one sort. I get what you guys are saying. It's going to be interesting to see what the final result is.
Yeah, I think the priority obviously is safety and health, but the second priority is sustainability of the league in the next 1, 2, 3 seasons. Whatever decisions you make now have to be with a view that in 2025 we still have a 30-team league, and we still have all the teams that we have now, and we still have all the roster spots we have now, and we still have roughly the same salary cap that we have now, so that we're not compromising that for any reason. So, I think the interesting part for me and the part that I think about a lot is the salary cap implications heading into next year, the year after, et cetera, et cetera. Like if you're talking about fans not being in arenas, and that being 40% of your revenue, does that mean that the salary cap goes down by 40% and each player has to sacrifice 40% of their salary? Like what does that actually mean? What sort of implications are there? And if players are unwilling to give up that cash, does that mean that we lose 2 teams in a year? Does that mean that we have to get expansion teams in and we have to try and raise revenue for expansion? There are so many different issues to this, and I think I agree, Justin, that it's not ideal to get teams in just to try and lose 5 games. But at the same time, I find it hard to believe that those players wouldn't be doing everything they can to try and impress, particularly on those lower level teams, to try and get traded to a better team or try and up their salary for next year or try and get a spot on a roster. Because the other thing is that they could slash roster spots, they could slash minimum salaries, they could take a number of steps. So a number of these players will be playing for their livelihoods in those 5 games. And there won't necessarily be as much of a pot to throw around next season. So it could be the difference between someone having a sustainable basketball career and having to give it away. So for me, I think it's I would support the 5 games if there's a justifiable financial reason for it. But if there's no financial benefit to playing those 5 games, I don't think it's necessary for health and safety reasons. I think if you're looking at long-term sustainability of the game, you're going to have to make the decision on everything on balance. So I think it's really interesting and cool that we're going to have everything in the same place. And one of the issues that I've heard discussed at length is the presentation of the games. You saw Bundesliga pipe in crowd sound for the German soccer league, and they had cardboard cutouts of fans that paid a certain amount of money to have their faces in the stands. And, there's some weird stuff going on, but it's because there's no precedent for this. Teams don't know how to present their games without fans because they provide so much atmosphere. I mean, NBA games already have music blaring between possessions and during possessions. Alex, do you have a view on what you'd like to see done from a presentation perspective? How would you like the games to look and feel?
If I'm being completely honest with you, I really could not care less. I just want basketball back, man. If they're playing games, I don't think they need any extra motivation. Like if you're in the playoffs and you need extra motivation, I think you're not playing the right sport. So if you want to put some crowd sounds in, they're going to have a jumbotron so they can blast music as they normally would. I mean, we've all been to NBL games. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like I can't hear anything that anyone is saying in the crowd. They just blast the music so loud anyway. Yeah. So I feel like they could take the NBL approach and just go like that. But yeah, I mean, I like the cardboard cutout idea. I thought that was funny, and it's an extra way to make revenue. So if they want to do that and everyone can, take a photo of a selfie of themselves and send it in, and the Paceroos boys could get themselves to a Pacers game.
Justin, do you want to hear what the players say to each other?
That would be cool as well.
I'm interested in that if they're going to somehow mute out, because I'm going to gather there's going to be a lot of swearing and trash talking on the course. I'm really interested to see what the NBA does with that. Also, with the crowd stuff as well, I was thinking today, is it going to affect the players, like, just thinking Pacers here, the TJ McConnells, the Lance Stevensons of the world, without the fans, they thrive on the fans. I think those, do they play different, or are they, that professional? Am I just being silly that they'll always go hard no matter what? But you see, TJ's always pointing at the fans, and we all know what Lance is like with the fans. Is he going to be as effective in an empty stadium? What do you think?
On the flip side, Kawhi's going to score like 70 a game.
Well, yeah, exactly. You could have players that don't.
Yeah, a lot of players get nervous in late game situations as well. So
yeah,
I mean, with an AFL stance as well, I think the goal kicking had never been better in round one with no fans.
That's true. Yeah.
Which, what does that tell you? That fan pressure.
It's almost like it's practice.
Free throw shooting is going to be interesting.
Exactly right. My only big thing is, if LeBron hits a game winner in Game 7 or something like that, and there's no one cheering, God, that's going to feel weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
like
I think
local rec league game.
Yeah.
They've got to do something to counteract it, and I think it's probably the easy thing to do is just play music. I know that the AFL here is the one that we can compare it to, and I thought it was weird that the AFL presentation was very similar to how I would feel attending a local footy game in Tasmania growing up with 500 people there. Like, it's the same vibe. You're hearing the players yelling at each other. You're hearing, all the different sounds of the game. And it's weird because this is supposed to be a game that's played in front of, 10, 50, 100,000 people on occasion. So
I think you have to dim the lights in the stands. I think that would help.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to take you've got to basically take any emphasis off the empty.
I mean, they could do that in an NBA game. Just shine like a massive light on the court.
Staples Center's kind of like that.
Yeah.
Pacers don't, but you dim the stands, and it's the same with the AFL. I think the games look like the Port Adelaide versus Gold Coast was so much better because it was at a small stadium. The Geelong game wasn't so bad, but the Richmond Collingwood at the MCG looked terrible because it was
100,000 seats
empty.
and no one there.
Yeah.
I think for me, I would actually have preferred if the NBA went to practice courts and was playing on practice courts, because I feel like the smaller the arena, the better the experience would be if there was no one there, because there's not going to be anyone at a practice facility. Like, I think about the Orlando Summer League every year, and the presentation of that Orlando Summer League, it does feel a bit weird, but it's also, you look at it and you think, oh, there's no one there because there's no one there. It's a practice facility. Like, I think, I'm not sure what the arenas are like in Disney World, but I'm thinking there are a lot of seats. So I think crowd noise is probably the only thing I'd say. Justin, are you concerned about the presentation of the game, or are you more like, let's just bring it on?
A bit. I'm nervous. Like, I really hope. I think the owners are having a meeting on Friday American time, and there's going to be an announcement about the season. Fingers crossed it's going to be good news that they're going to try and play the season. I think I'd be shocked if they cancel it from here, but I really want it to be good. I don't want to. I've been without NBA for nearly the longest period of my life, kind of. I don't want it to come back and go, oh, this is shit. I don't want that bitter taste in my mouth. I think I really trust Adam Silver. I think he's one of the best commissioners in all of sports. God, that man's underpaid. I don't care what he's being paid right now. He's underpaid. You imagine the stress and how much information he's getting from every party. Like, he's got so much jobs on the line. In a sporting factor, I know there's more important people in the world, like, prime ministers and nurses and doctors, but in the sporting globe, Adam Silver has so much on his shoulders, and I think he'll do it. He'll do it right. I think he's gathering information from all the players, all the coaches, all the owners, what they want to do, and he'll come to a happy medium. I think it will be entertaining. We put the Paceroos poll out. How would you feel if Pacers won the championship this year? And over 70% of people said it'd still be a dream come true. So I think that's massive just from the get go.
I mean, as I was saying to you guys before the show, I'm not going to be there anyway. Even if we were to make the finals this season, I wasn't going to be there. So for me, I don't care how many people are in the stands or who they are, because I will be consuming it the same way regardless of how far we get in the playoffs. So I don't mind. I think the other thing about it is that we need to be real about this. Sport gives people something to do. It gives people something to watch. It gives people something to believe in, something to follow. And one of the big, issues with this whole pandemic and this isolation is that you've had people with nothing to do, with one of their major outlets taken away from them. And, it can't be underrated how many people in the world turn to sport for an outlet, turn to sport for something to do. So I think the move to try and get the season back as soon as possible can't come soon enough for me. I don't care what comes back now. Baseball, rugby league, like all the sports I don't usually watch, I will watch now because I've got nothing better to do with my time when my kids go to sleep. I'm watching reruns of Community, which is awesome, but I'm also craving sport. The Last Dance was incredible, but the reason it was incredible was because it was the only sport I had for 5 weeks. So aside from the fact that it was one of my favorite athletes of all time. I think regardless of how many teams we get back, regardless of what format they play in, I just want to see as much basketball as humanly possible. And the silver lining of it is that hopefully there'll be a really quick turnaround between the end of this season and the start of next season, because there has to be. And if that's the case, if we go from a end of September finish of the season and then a start of December or a Christmas start of the next season, then that's a win in my book, because at that point we've only got 2 months between seasons and we get more basketball sooner. So, Alex, isn't that a win for everyone?
Basketball being back is an absolute win for everyone. Even if you don't care about basketball, it's a win for you. But I completely zoned out after you said off season, because I have been very distracted the last month, as most Pacers fans probably have been, by some unfortunate news. You know what, Justin, you live by the Woj and Shams. If they don't tweet it, it's not real. I kind of feel you on that one, but I think it was Ian Bagley, wasn't it, if I'm not mistaken, tweeted out or wrote about the Pacers and Oladipo having some traction, if you will, or not being able to agree on a contract extension. So I feel like we are obliged to talk about it. And we've seen some trade rumors. I know the Knicks have been interested. I'm sure a lot of other teams are as well. I just want to get your guys' opinions on what you think about this whole Victor Oladipo situation, because
I've got
honestly,
some strong opinions.
I really don't know what to think about it.
Firstly, as usual, all of the trade rumors are trash.
That is true, yes.
I've only seen one trade that's made me go, and we might talk about it in a second. But on the whole, just like all of the Turner trade rumors, all of the Oladipo trade rumors have been trash. They've neglected any of what the Pacers would get back in a deal and focused on the team that's getting the good player from Indiana, which is ridiculous. Secondly, I don't see Indiana and Oladipo parting ways. I see them coming to an agreement on an extension, whether it be this summer or next summer. I don't see him leaving the team. I think he likes the position he's in. I think he likes being the man on a team. I don't think he wants to go to a team where he's the second guy. I think he wants his own team, like so many people do. He's clearly interested in being a star after The Masked Singer, etc. So I think he likes having his own franchise. So I'm confident that he wants to stay, and I'm also confident that the club wants him to stay. As usual, this comes down to money, comes down to business. Are the Pacers willing to pay him what he thinks he's worth? And
what do you think he's worth, Adam?
I think at the moment he's on about $21 million a year. I think he's worth more than that. I think he's probably worth late 20s, between 25 and 28 on the open market. I think that's based on how he is right this second, which is coming back from a year-long injury, not necessarily getting back into that form. I think if he got it back into all-star form and was producing at an all-star level, he deserves to be paid like an all-star, and all-stars are paid the max salary. So I think it's if he thinks that he's going to get back to that level, then he shouldn't sign an extension this summer. He should play another all-star year and then get paid all-star money. If he is at all concerned, then he should seek financial security. So for me, I'm sitting on the fence a little bit, but it's based on production for me. Justin, what about you?
Yeah, for me, I'd hate to be a GM because I'm a fan, and I think right now I don't think Oladipo is deserving of the max. He's my favorite player. I love him, but he's had one great season with us. He's had a terrible injury and he's come back. We don't know what he's going to be like. And for Kevin Pritchard to go, here's a max contract, geez, it's tough. It puts the team in a lot of risk for the future if he doesn't get back to his all-star / superstar level. But then again, on the other flip side, if I wake up one morning and Oladipo's gone to Miami because Pacers didn't offer him a max deal, I'm going to be pissed off.
Yeah.
So it's catch-22. I got to be honest. It's, I'm speaking as a fan, max deal. Oh man, that's a lot. But do you hear me, Alex? That,
if I'm Victor Oladipo, I am betting on myself. Yeah. I truly believe that he thinks he's better now than he was before his injury. And if I'm the Pacers, I'm fine not signing him this offseason. What's he played? 12 games or something like that?
Yeah.
Even if he plays well in the playoffs, I say he bets on himself for another year. You know what? He makes the All-Star team and we have enough salary. Give him the max. I'm fine with that.
We don't.
That's where but that's where you if you're KP, you have to look at options. You have to look at, what Smiles on an 18. Do you look at moving him? Jeremy Lamb to clear up $10 million. Do you move him? McDermott or Holiday? Do you not re-sign someone? So, obviously there's a ton of moves that KP can make, but if Victor Oladipo makes the All-Star team, I think you have to make those moves, and I think you have to keep him in Indy for a long time.
Yeah, the tough part for me is that usually teams win where they've got enough cap flexibility to be able to sign great players to big deals whilst also paying existing players rookie deals. And we're just about to roll off our last great players rookie deal. So the cap crunch that's going to come in the next 2 seasons is going to be severe, and it's going to take an extremely skilled front office and extremely skilled GM to keep the amount of talent that we've got around in the ball club without having to sacrifice cap space. And, we know that the team doesn't want to go into the tax, and we know that the team is adverse to spending gobs of money, which is fair enough. Like, it's their prerogative. That's the way that they do business. They've made that very clear. If you don't like it, then don't support the club. But at the same time, you do hope that they look at the talent that they've got on this roster and they either make moves to improve it or they make moves to secure it. Because if they don't do either of those things, then we're going to regress and we're just going to be stuck in that cycle of mediocrity. So, it's a scary prospect for Pacers fans losing another All-Star. And, I say that the only fake trade out there that I even remotely considered was Oladipo in another All-Star swapping places. So I think that was a proposed fake trade with Donovan Mitchell. That's the type of player that Indiana needs to ask for if it has to trade an All-Star.
What about? Well, we've been seeing a lot of Bradley Beal rumors, and I saw that Miller Time Pod tweeted saying that the Pacers should go all in for Bradley Beal. So I don't know. That's just another name.
To get him along with Oladipo.
Well, that's the question. I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't see how you can do it.
You would probably have to give up Brogdon in that situation, I'd say.
And Bill's earning $30 million, so you ultimately sacrifice all cap flexibility to be able to put any pieces around. Like you potentially have to trade 2 starters for a Beal, and then all of a sudden you've got no money. So I would only do that if I had basically secured 3 All-Stars as a result of that trade. So, Domas is an All-Star, Vic's an All-Star. You do the math on who has to go. But if you can get 3 All-Stars on your club and then basically fill around them with guys that are making, $10 million and less, then you probably consider it. But I don't know if that is the answer. I don't know. What position does Beal play? What position does Oladipo play?
In that lineup, I would probably go Depot and Beal at the backcourt, and then Warren, Domas, and then maybe like a filler player at the 5. I would say Turner gets dealt in a deal, so you'd probably have to fill someone there.
And that's a hell of a lineup, though.
Is that team winning the East? Is it beating Philly?
I think they're beating Philly, but I don't know if they would beat the Nets though or the Bucks.
Is beating the Bucks. Who's guarding Giannis?
That's exactly the point, yeah.
And this is what I came back to in the off season, and I come back to it now. The biggest hole you've got to have a look at who you're competing against. You're competing against next season. You're competing against the Bucks with Giannis. You're competing against the Nets with Durant. You're competing against the Sixers with Embiid. Do you have a player that can guard any of, or at least a couple of those players? Do you have that forward that can guard Durant and Giannis? We don't at the moment. We don't have that guy. And, without that sort of a player, unfortunately, we're going to run into one of those teams regardless. Like, we need to address that need. And we need to address it. If we're going to deal away one of our starters, that's got to be the area of need that we address. I mean, am I talking sense here, Justin?
Yeah. Pacers have historically always tried to, when they've got a good team match up against their opponents, obviously Chicago in the late 90s, and then we did Detroit, that defensive battle, and then most recently Miami when we had, Paul George and George Hill and everyone like that. So you do have to match up against your peers, your competitors, the teams on top of you to have any success. So, it is going to be interesting. I'm with you guys. A lot of the Oladipo trade rumors. I don't think Pritchard will trade him.
No, I don't think you will either. And I don't think you should.
No, I don't think so either. I'm just a bit hesitant as a long-term fan. We're investing a lot of money because I think what gives me a lot more confidence was the last game. I don't know if it was the last game we played. I think it was against Boston where
Celtics,
he turned it on. I watched that game today, actually, and, geez, that brought back great memories and had me thinking, God, he can get back to, if not being better. So I just think this offseason is going to be so interesting in the NBA with the draft and off-season signings and caps. I think, Golden State might get the number one pick. Will they trade it? There's rumors they're going to trade it for Ben Simmons and all this sort of stuff going online. I'm so interested, not just with the Pacers, but the NBA as an off-season.
Imagine as a player you were a free agent this year and missed out on the 2016 free agency.
Yeah.
How shattered would you be?
Yeah, it's pretty poor timing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Who knows what you're going to get as a salary now? Like, money, GMs and owners aren't going to just be writing out checks now, trying to get you to the team. I think everyone's going to be very cut savvy, and it's going to be interesting. Like, Tobias Harris is on $34 million. Would the Philly owner be writing that check out to him next year? I don't think so.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting to see what it forces teams into, particularly teams that are paying into the tax, because you've committed to these salaries and there's no going away from that. I mean, Washington has committed to, I don't know, something like $75 million between Wall and Beal. So
that's crazy.
When you look at that, like, you kind of have to trade Beal at this point because half your salary is reserved for John Wall, and Wall's got like 2 years left, maybe 3. And at some point you have to look at that situation and say, yeah, we got to get off this because there's no money coming in, or there's nowhere near as much money coming in. So
and they're not contending for a long time, the Wizards.
Yeah. Teams can't afford to pay the tax next year.
Yeah.
So you will see some interesting moves, I think. There'll still be some teams like, Golden State can probably still afford to pay the tax because they've made that much cash over the last 5 years that they can afford to take a hit for a year or two. But other teams just don't have that flexibility. Like Portland is paying a lot of money in salary. So what's going to happen with them over the next year? The Clippers can probably afford it. They've got a billionaire owner. The Thunder are paying a lot in salary. I think Gallinari comes off, so you would think that they would let Gallinari walk, and there's no chance of him sticking around. Like, the teams that are way in the red are the ones to watch. And I think that's where we've spoken about the Pacers being penny pinchers for a while now, and this could be where an opportunity presents itself. Can you get an all-star for, 60 cents on the dollar? Because
can you sign Justin Holiday for the minimum?
Can you sign Justin Holiday for less than his market value because of the situation you find yourself in? Are players going to be more willing to take short deals because they're thinking the money will be there in 1, 2, 3 years?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of 1 year deals, in my opinion.
Yeah,
but 1 and 2 year deals.
Just watching a lot of stuff in isolation, I think we'll probably all agree, but Pacers are one all-star away from really competing. Yep. Do you guys agree with that?
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, I think we need, let's just say we lose no one, which is impossible, but we need like a Bradley Beal on the team, and then you go, okay, this team's stacked. Yeah, I think we're one.
That's what the Pacers have always been, though.
Yeah,
against the Heat, we were always one. We were a healthy Danny Granger away.
Yeah.
Or against the Bulls, we were one scorer away. We've always been. I think the Pacers just struggled to get that last piece. And I think if any GM's going to do it, I think KP is the one to do it. So
in 2004, we were one cup thrown on the court away.
Yeah.
Don't bring that up.
Yeah. It's the same story again and again. We're just slightly short.
Yeah.
And as I said, the opportunity could present itself this summer. So, or this winter, or this spring, this autumn, whatever time free agency will end up being in America. But yeah, it's an interesting take. There's a lot of water under the bridge yet, but I think the excitement for Pacers fans could be that, are we in the position to be able to take advantage of the circumstances that befall us? Because if we are, then we could get that All-Star when we're one All-Star away.
Well, I think what goes into it a lot is David West mentioned he watched the Pacers in the playoffs, and it's what made him want to come to Indiana. He said, I could feel that team. They could use me. I think this year more than ever, like every athlete, if you're in the NBA and are going to be watching the playoffs, they're going to be at home. If you're a good player on a bad team coming up to free agency, you're going to be watching thinking, who should I fit into?
I think
it's
who also said that though? You know who said that about the Pacers 2 years ago?
Who?
Tyreek Evans.
Oh no.
Well,
so it doesn't always end out.
How
well.
dare you?
Well, yeah. Well, that's kind of just rain on my parade, hasn't it, Alex?
Yeah, that's all we got
But
time
I
for
get
this
what
week
you're
on the
saying,
Paceroos podcast. I think, Alex. I think Tyreek Evans is the cue for us to finish the episode. I think we finished it on a sour note. It's your fault, Alex. And you can think about that for the next week, and then we'll come back for an episode, and you might even be suspended. Justin and I might have to get together and suspend you for an episode, bringing up Tyreek Evans' name.
Yeah, that's a 1 week suspension.
Oh boy.
Yeah, you might be put in Twitter jail for that one as well.
He's been there before.
Yeah. All right, guys. It's been a pleasure to bring the Paceroos Podcast Lockdown Edition to you this week. We'll try and make some more content for you as more news comes to hand on the NBA season. But till next time, this has been the Paceroos. Good luck in lockdown. Stay safe, everyone.